Hey, welcome everyone. My name's Paul Devlin. I'm calling in tonight from Colorado. And tonight, as you're joining me, let me see some hearts and thumbs up so I know you guys are here and that I'm actually live. Hey, Ann, welcome. And Courtney, Janet, good to see you. All right. So what we're going to talk about tonight are two actions. Well, really, it's one action that it's the number one money-making action in our profession, which is this leverage sales business that we're in with Fusion Biotech. And so it's the action. The action is talking to someone new, someone that's never heard about the opportunity before or never heard about the products before. Hey, Cindy. And so it's interesting because this action, well, it can be divided into two basic segments. It's an approach or an invitation. All right, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But what's interesting about this is this is the action that if you take enough of it, can produce spectacular returns, unbelievable returns in your business. And it's always the case like this in the free market system. The action that produces the biggest results is the one that's the hardest for people to do. It's the one that scares people the most. It's the one that stops people the most. People won't do it because of fear of rejection or fear of what the other person's going to think about what they're doing. And so therefore, this is the action where if you can master it, this is where the rubber truly meets the road in our business. I mean, millionaires actually get produced by mastering this simple activity because everything flows from this. And so it's interesting to me, and it's actually such a simple thing to do, and yet people will get excited and they'll do it for a week, or some people will do it for a month, or they'll do it for 3 months or even 6 months, and then they'll stop. But it's the kind of action where you can't just do a little bit of it and stop. It's something you have to do consistently over an extended period. That's what produces the spectacular results. And so, again, the action is talking to someone new, someone that's never heard about the opportunity of their products before. Okay, so let's zero in on exactly what this is. I break it down into two groups. So you have, on the one hand, you have an approach, and on the second side of it, you have an actual invitation. So an approach is just a hello. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? You're talking to someone new that maybe you don't know. I mean, that's often what an approach is it's a bump into. You're seeing someone at a coffee shop and you're just greeting them. The difference between an approach and an invitation is sometimes an approach will actually lead to an invitation and sometimes it won't, which is okay. The real objective of the approach is to add someone to who you know. Because in our business, what we're really getting paid for, and where the reason companies are willing, like Fusion, are willing to fund these gigantic commission checks, is for our contacts. It's who we know. And so the approach is about building your contact base. It's about building up who you know. And again, that's in the end what you get paid for. And sometimes you'll find that an approach is an appropriate time to do an invitation. And other times you're going to find out that an approach is just more appropriate to just capture their information. Make sure when you do these, or do the best you can. You can't always do this, but do the very best you can to get their contact information. So a lot of times people are quick to get business cards, and I've got no problem with business cards, but they're quick to pass out business cards, right? But as soon as you pass out a business card, if you don't get their information and you've done an approach with someone new, you've given up the control of the interaction. And I mean, I literally, in 30 years of doing this, could count on one hand the number of times that I've handed something and not captured their information and had them at some point in the future contact me back. It's very rare, right? So because of that, now maybe there's people that have different experiences with that. That's been my experience. So therefore, I think with the approach, the key is we want to get their contact information. So that's number one. I think there's probably 4 items, and you might want to grab a pen. I mean, this is important enough to maybe even take some notes on it. And it took me a really long time to dial this in and figure it out. So this would be worth taking some notes on and really mastering, because as I said, the whole business pivots and centers around these activities. So the first thing in approach is you want to get their information. The second thing is you want to add them to your contact list. Because again, if you just get their business card or you're capturing their information and you never actually put it into your follow-up system, it doesn't do you any good. Because, you empty your pockets, it goes in the bottom of your purse or whatever, you lose track of it. You're never going to get in touch with them, until 2 years later, you're like, oh, yeah, that great guy I met in the coffee shop, right? So you got to get their information. You got to add them to the contact list. And here's the third, and this is important, is somewhere in the interaction of an approach, you've got to reference getting in touch with them again. You've got to plant the seed for the fact that you're going to be contacting them again in the future. Okay, that's number 3. And then 4 is the optional one, which is to do an actual invitation. So like a great context for an approach that leads to an invitation is when you've got a captive audience, like you're sitting on an airplane next to somebody, or you're on a train or a bus, or you're at the DMV, right? You're waiting for 45 minutes before you're going to go up and get your license renewed or whatever you're doing. You've got a captive audience. You have enough time to actually get into an invitation with the person. But a lot of times, it's quick. You're in a line at a grocery store. Like I said, you're at a coffee shop. What do you have? Maybe 1 or 2 minutes to be able to capture that information. You may or may not have a chance to actually go into an invitation. As I said before, it may or may not be appropriate. You have to use your judgment at that moment as to whether or not you want to actually go ahead and make an invitation. And this is just kind of using your intuition and your sense of what's appropriate in an interaction with somebody. And a lot of times you just go with your gut. What is your gut telling you? Is an invitation at this point going to be pushing it? Hey, Isa, welcome. Is an invitation at this point going to be crossing like a boundary line that maybe you shouldn't cross yet? And I think a lot of people, when they get in our business, they get this urge that every single interaction has got to lead to an invitation, or you're somehow not doing the business. Not true. Not true at all. In fact, you could actually look at it this way. I could actually design a contract for you where if you were to go out and just meet 2 new people and do the first 3, get their information, add them to your contact list, and refer to or reference a future connection. If you were to do that 2 times a day for 4 years straight, that at the end of that contract period, if you fulfill that, I would guarantee you a $10,000 annuity for the rest of your life. Now, would that be the kind of contract you could go out and perform on if you had that possibility, right? If you knew that all you had to do was go out and meet 2 new people a day for 4 years straight, and you would be guaranteed a $10,000 a month annuity for the rest of your life, would you do that? Right? I mean, it's a hypothetical. I get that, right? But literally, imagine how many people you're adding to your contact list. Imagine where that's going to lead over time, just getting to know people. So take the pressure off, folks, when you're out, especially, again, the context here, these aren't your best friends. These are people you're bumping into, right? Remember that the objective of an approach is to get them into your contacts and to set up that future connection with the person. It's totally okay if it doesn't lead to an invitation in that bump into moment. It's totally okay. So I want to release you from feeling that pressure, because again, if you feel pressure, you're going to convey that in that initial approach, and it's going to, when you're pushing, what does the person do? They back away, right? So, but when you are just making an approach and standing your ground stable, they'll tend to come towards you. It's just, and so that's what you have to kind of sense in the dynamics of the interaction when you're doing approaches. Sometimes it's appropriate to invite and sometimes it's not. All right. So how do you do these approaches? Like, what are some of the techniques you want to use? So we know that there's people out there that for whom this is like the easiest thing ever, to be bouncing around in public, and they talk to everybody. My brother's like that. He's a salesman, and he'll walk into a restaurant, and before long he's just walking over, he's introducing himself to people at other tables. He's making strange comments, and they're laughing, and before you know it, they're in this dialogue. I mean, he's just such a natural at this. I'm not a natural. This has been such an area of personal growth, and for me personally, to be able to be outgoing enough to actually do this. And so if you're not outgoing, you're not someone who's comfortable doing that, what do? Well, you learn the skill. That's what you do. If you want to be effective in network marketing and adding contacts to your list, and you're not naturally inclined, because some people are not like me. You're not naturally inclined to do this, right? You've got to learn the skill. So you have to begin to envision yourself being the type of person who, if that type of person would walk up to you and say hello or say whatever, that you'd want to respond. And then imagine yourself being that kind of person and build that into your personal growth, personal development. Get some books, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Become inspired by other people that are masters at this craft and learn it. It's a totally learnable skill, and it's easy. And once you get it, it's actually, the scary part is just the initial initiation of the conversation. And it's just as simple, like I said earlier, as saying hello and just making small talk with someone to get a conversation rolling. And once you do, the key to it is to take the focus off of your insecurity about doing something like that, right? And put the focus on them. And become fascinated in them as a human being. What's their story? What are they about? And questions, follow-up questions, inquiring about their life. And then once you get the art of that, the approach becomes so easy, because people are fascinating. People's stories are incredible. I mean, you could be standing in a line, you're going to be standing there for 3 or 4 minutes waiting, and this person in front of you may have this unbelievable story that you're never going to learn about. They're never going to end up on your contact list. They're never going to end up as a part of your life if you don't open your mouth and say something. And so the downside here is you end up with a new friend. And every new friend has 300 or 400 friends. So that's the worst that can happen, is you never invite them, or you do invite them and it's not a fit, and you've got this new person in your life that could lead you to other things. So there's absolutely no downside. And if you're going to be in our business, it's just one of the simplest things you can do to expand your list of people you know. Now let's drill into a little deeper into this approach concept, because there's a way that you can actually engineer these conversations to get the question that you want. In other words, if I'm in just a random conversation with somebody and I'm thinking about, wow, this person's got a lot of potential for a potential business partner for me, let's say, or a customer. What's the question I want them to ask me? So that's where you start. You back away and say, what would I want this person to ask me if I could design it? Well, a great question, right, is, well, hey, Paul, what do you do? What do you do? Tell me about what you do, right? I mean, given that question, now I've got this incredible opening that could easily lead to an invitation, right? So how do we get them there? How do you get someone to ask you the question that you want them to ask you, right? That's the idea. Well, if you want someone to ask you what you do, the way you get the easiest way to do it is to ask what they do. And not just to ask what they do, but ask what they do and then be fascinated in what they do. Ask them how long they've been doing it. Ask them what they love about it. What don't they like about it? Any questions that come to mind when they tell you what they do, ask them about it. Follow up. And then here's the trick to the whole thing. And this is where the language engineering really works. Once you've strung out a series of questions and you've demonstrated them, you really do care about what they do and you're fascinated in it, stop and let there be this incredible pregnant pause, you know, and don't fill it with talk. I mean, again, as networkers, once we start to talk, our biggest enemy is talking too much. Once we get over, if you're not an outgoing person, once you figure out how to be outgoing, your worst enemy is talking too much. So once you've had this dialogue, stop. Let there be this long pregnant pause. And after 5 minutes or whatever of being fascinated and inquiring all about what they do, and then you just stop, the law of reciprocity works like magic. They feel inside, it just comes out of them automatically to say, well, hey, what do you do? So guys, this is such a simple way we can engineer the question. Now, once we get them to ask us that question, what do we do with that? Right? And this is where most people, especially when they're new in the profession, blow it big time, right? Because they ask the question and inside they're like, oh my God, they asked me what I do. I've got this opportunity now to explode and tell them everything about Fusion right now. I can tell them all about the comp plan, all about the products. There's 22 of them. I can list all the categories. I can tell them about how deep they get paid on which level. Oh my God, this is such a, right? And people they go on and on and on. And again, they're doing this and the person's like, whoa, dude, right? And they're backing away and we lose them. So this is the critical moment, right? When you're in an impromptu conversation, they ask you what you do. How do you handle that? Well, I'm going to give you the way I do it. And it's a really simple thing. You might want to take a couple notes. And it's called the you know how speech. And it's really simple. So when I'm in this question, I'm asking them questions about what they do, I'm listening. You know, what are they telling me about? What are the things that they like? What are the things that they don't like? And I'm getting a sense, hey, is this someone that I'm more interested in offering a business to, or is it someone I'm more interested in offering a product to? All right, so that's the first thing you got to decide. They're going to ask you what you do. I'm going to teach you now how to do this you know how response. But you've got to decide, do I want to respond with a product offer or a business offer? Okay, so let's just say that this is a person that's worked at a corporation. They make really good money, but they're working 70 hours a week and they're kind of burned out on it and they don't see a whole lot of future in it for themselves, right? So it's kind of, I'm working really hard. I get paid well, but it's consuming their life. They don't have a lot of free time. Okay, so to me, that's going to be more of a they're presenting to me that their primary problem is a business problem, right? So that's the offer I'm going to make. So here's how the you know how speech works. You know how, so they say, what do you do? And I say, well, okay, Joe, do you know how there are all these people out there? Well, kind of like what you were just saying. They've worked these careers in these corporations. But the more successful they get, they find they may make pretty good money, but they find that the less time that they have to actually enjoy their life. Stop. Okay? So what I'm doing with the you know how speech, just to give you the form of it, is I'm saying, do you know how? Everything starts with that. There is this problem. So I'm gonna lay out a problem that's common to human beings, like I just did, and then I'm gonna stop again. And this is kind of the art of learning the pregnant pause. And so I'm gonna stop, and because what am I looking for him to say? I'm gonna say, I want him to respond. I want to get a yes out of him. I want him to say, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I'm dealing with, right? So I'm going to say, after he says that, I'm going to stop. I'm going to let him say that. I'm going to say, well, what I do is I show people how they can actually start a business alongside their career, whatever it is, without affecting the career in any way. And over a period of time, they can add an income stream to their life. And in some cases, as is what happened for me, they can actually end up walking away from that career if they want to. Stop. So, you know how there's this problem, in parentheses. What I do is I solve that problem. That's the you know how speech, right? And so now I've painted the picture for him. I'm going to stop again. Again, the art of pausing, and I'm not going to go and fill the pause and fill the space with a bunch of blather. I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to wait for them to say something like, well, how do you do that? Well, or that sounds interesting. Tell me more. Or, wow, that's cool. What is that? I'm going to wet, I want them coming to me. This is the sort of the difference between the art of fly fishing in our business and conversation versus duck hunting. I've used this analogy. Some of you guys have heard me use this before, but fly fishing is putting out something that's so irresistible, a fly that looks like a natural fly at that time of year that a trout has to rise and take it. It's like every instinct in its body is like, I'm going to go get that, right? Where duck hunting is to hide in a blind with a 12 gauge double barrel shotgun, and the ducks fly over and you stand up and blow them out of the sky. And that's the way a lot of networkers do the business. And you know what? What I found is it doesn't work. What works is fly fishing, the art of conversation, so we get them coming to us. And once we get that dialogue going, it's powerful. So they'll say something like, wow, that's interesting. How do you do that? And now, again, what do I do? Now, if I'm sitting on a plane and I've got them for another hour, I could go from inviting them to presenting to them right then and there. But what I'm going to do now is an invitation. I'm going to say, well, you know what, Joe? It sounds like you'd be the kind of person that you're exactly the kind of guy that I work with. I'd love to show it to you. It'll take me, it takes about 15 or 20 minutes for you to learn about it. It'll definitely be worth your time. And you know what? In the end, Joe, if it's not a fit for you, I understand. It's totally okay. So I'm going to do an invitation, and I'm going to say, so what's a good time for you? When could we get together? So here's what my schedule's like. I could do something tomorrow morning, or I could do something a Wednesday night. Which of those works better for you? This is also when you're going for an invitation to set an appointment, try to give them choices. Pick A or B, or A, B, or C, and let them pick one instead of just putting an open-ended question out there that they can easily just, say no to. So give them choices. And then it's so easy Wednesday night works better. Okay, great. So I'll call you or I'll meet you here or whatever. You close and set the appointment at that time. And sometimes these conversations at this point will get sidetracked into, they will try to sidetrack it into other areas. And let's look at that. In fact, now that I've gone from the approach, and we've talked about that all the way into how an approach using the how kind of speech can lead into an invitation, let's talk about the invitation in specifics. So an invitation is defined where the objective is to set an appointment for a presentation. That's what an invitation is. It's to invite them to sit in front of or to listen to or to watch a video or whatever presentation you want to use, a presentation to look at Fusion. And that's the objective. Not everybody's going to say yes to that, but that's the goal. And there's 3 parts to the basic invitation that you want to include when you invite someone. And these are just parts that I've taught over the years. And there may be other things that you want to use. Again, get with your sponsorship line. They've all got different ways of teaching and training. But this is just how I do it. But the 3 elements are, number 1, that it's something you need to show them. Showing. Number 2, the second part of the invitation is how long it's going to take. So if it's products, I tend to say it'll just take me 5 or 10 minutes to show you the product line. If it's business, I'm going to say, it's going to take me 15 or 20 minutes to show it. And because the business, there's more involved, because we're going to talk about the products, a little bit about the opportunity, the timing, the support. There's more elements, so it's going to take longer. And then the third is a release statement of some kind. Hey, listen, it may or may not be a fit for you, which is totally fine. Something that releases them. It's especially important when you do invitations. Again, when we've been talking about approaches tonight, we're mostly talking about people you don't know. But with invitations, those are often, people that are already in your contact list. They're people you already know. If you call them or bump into them, it's someone that's on your contact list. And so especially important with your friendships and your relationships. The closer they are to you, the more important it is to release them. Always leave people free not to do it. That's the most attractive thing at all. I'll tell you, in our business, where we get into trouble is when the prospect or the candidate is feeling a hook. They're feeling like you're trying to use the fact that you've had this relationship with them all these years to get them in your business. That's a hook. What the release statement does is it removes the hook. It leaves them free not to do it. And when people feel free, that's when they're the most likely to move towards the thing, to feel like they would openly look at it. But as soon as they feel the Velcro or the hooks, they're going to back away. It's just human nature. So don't put those in there. Don't pressure people with the invitation. Always leave them free not to do it. It's really one of the most powerful things you can learn. And what that conveys also when you leave someone free is confidence. You know, when people feel like you need them for your business, that, you know, you'd really believe in this if only they'd join, you're dead. It's over. Forget it. You know, it just doesn't work. You've got to convey that you're going to go to the top of Fusion with or without any particular person. It has nothing to do with a particular person. It's a game of going out into the world, into your contacts, building new contacts, expanding all the time who you know, introducing people, inviting them to look at a presentation, you know, letting them go through the presentation, letting them choose if it's a fit for them or not, and working with those people who want to change their situations right now, and really nobody else. That's the essence of the business. It's not our job to decide for them. And we don't want to be emotionally attached to which people say yes, which people say no. It's not about that. It's really about doing lots of approaches, lots of invitations over an extended period of time, doing good follow-up, getting them in front of presentations, enrolling the people, you know, when they're ready to enroll, you know, let them come in with the pack that makes the most sense for them. Again, leaving them free not to do it is maybe the most powerful closing sales technique you'll ever learn. Right? So that's the basic invitation. And, you know, you can get to that from the you know how speech. You can get to it right off of your list. But let's just talk real quick in closing. I've just got a couple minutes here. Is you're going to get a couple of responses really common. The first one is, well, what is it? You're going to invite them to look at it. And they're just, well, just tell me what it is right now. You know, and the simple response to that is just to say, listen, if I could do this justice in 2 minutes with you, I would. But I've actually got to go. And so it takes 15 or 20 minutes. Again, that shows strength. That if you tell them it's going to take 15 or 20 minutes and they say, well, tell me what is it? And then you comply and you give them the 2-minute overview or the 30-second overview. Well, now they've taken control of your business, apparently. You know, it shows weakness. It doesn't show confidence. This is the business you're offering to them is your offer to them. It's your offer to change their life. Right? Not the other way around. So that's how the what is it response, you simply defer to the appointment. And, you know, you get to call the shots. The presentation, you get to call when that happens, not them. And that shows strength, not weakness. And people will tend to respond positively to that. The other thing they'll say to you often is, well, is it network marketing? You know, because people have been invited. Network marketing is more and more common in the United States, so people get asked that question, is it network marketing? So how do you respond to that? Well, the way I respond, again, get good coaching and counseling from your sponsorship line. But the way I respond to that is say yes. I said, and then I'll come right back and say, well, what do you know about the networking profession? Something like that. I'm going to put a question right back on them. And they're going to say blah, 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 whatever it is. Maybe it's positive, maybe it's neutral, maybe they don't know much. Maybe it's super negative, whatever it is, I don't care. What I'm going to come back with is, well, you know what? That's exactly why we need to get together and do this. Because are you aware of how much this profession has changed just in the last few years? I mean, that's such a great question. It's kind of a trick question. It's not fair to actually give that question to the prospects, but it works. Because, of course, they're not aware. When you say, are you aware of how much something has changed? In their mind, they're thinking, well, no, I'm not actually. And so what it does is it creates curiosity for them to want to know how much it's changed. And that gives them a secondary reason to do the appointment with you. What you don't typically want to do is get into some defense of the whole network marketing profession, especially if you're doing a quick invitation. But the simple, are you aware question works like magic. Are you aware of how much this profession's changed even in the last couple of years? In fact, you know, this company that I'm going to tell you about is one of the companies leading that change. So Joe, that's exactly why we need to get together and talk. And in fact, and I'll close with this tonight because we're right at 30 minutes in. Whatever objection they give you to an invitation, they find out it's a business and they tell you, oh, I don't have enough time for that, or I don't have enough money, or whatever the objection, you can always use that very same response. You know what, Joe, you don't have enough money? Brother, that's exactly the reason why we need to get together and do this. That's why we need to talk. Or Joe says, I don't have enough time. And I'm like, Joe, dude, that's what we're talking about here. That's why we need to get together. That's why I need to show you this. Seriously, you're a friend of mine. I can't believe that a good friend of mine can't put 15 or 20 minutes together. That's crazy, man. What's going on with your life, right? That's the reason we need to talk. So it's just a simple response. So you don't have to memorize, 37 different responses to 29 different objections. Pretty much, no matter what, any objection you can come up with, you can respond with just something that simple. So anyway, guys, we talked about approaches and invitations. I hope you found this information valuable. You can go put it to use. Remember, these two things, approaching people and adding to your contact list and making good invitations, it's the core of your business. It's where millionaires are made in our profession. So thanks for joining me tonight. Don't miss the Thursday night broadcast this week. Again, we'll be covering the Fusion opportunity. Get your prospects, invite them to join us this Thursday night. And that's again at 9 o'clock Eastern. Sorry again for being an hour late, but thanks to everybody for joining me. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.